everybody. Welcome to episode 128 of Directly to You, a fanatixfour podcast. That's you. That's where you were pointing, Pete. If you're listening to this in audio form, you did not see Pete pointing, but maybe you heard it from like the wind. I don't know, sound effect. In any case, thanks for being here. AJ's not here this week. I'm from fanatixfour. Pete is from Loot Pots, and he joins here. Never. This is the first time because that gag is still going on.
First time, long time.
Yeah. I see it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your rigmarole.
That's cool. AJ usually does the rigmarole, so mine's very, loosey goosey and such. But yeah, if you want to support this podcast, first thing you do is definitely just like subscribe to the YouTube channel for it, because that's helpful so that you can get all the episodes in the future. Also subscribe to fanatixfour if you haven't already. But then also, if you want to, you can join our Discord for free, or you can do other things and become a member of the channel for $5 on YouTube, or for free on Twitch if you have Twitch Prime that you don't use, like I often forget to. And then with all that, you get gaming time with us, some free Switch keys from time to time, some other things that AJ says, supporters only Discord, and that kind of stuff. And AJ also mentioned something about Grimhain made a playlist that he was like, we should talk about that on the podcast. And I was like, what playlist? And then he hasn't gotten back to me. So I don't know. We'll let y'all know about that sometime later.
We talked about it.
We mentioned it. So Grimhain, let me know about the playlist, because I don't even know, and I'm part of this thing. So that's that.
Good job, AJ.
Yeah. But what were you going to say a second ago?
I'm going to be honest with you. I let that one go. It was a relevant comment at the time, but it is gone.
No longer. All right. Well, cool. That's all the housekeeping we have. I'm sure there's other things. You can let us know in the comments if there were things that I probably forgot to mention. But in any case, we'll keep going into the first segment. What you playing, Pete?
So I have been a bad Nintendo fan this summer. I've been playing a lot of PlayStation games. I just came off of platinuming Ghost of Tsushima recently, which is a lovely game. Love it a lot. Tweeted about it a lot. And I had been playing Persona 5 before that, and I had gotten to like about roughly halfway through the game, maybe a little bit more than that, and it had reached a really natural like pausing point right as Ghost had come out. So coming off of Ghost, I was very eager to get back into Persona 5 Royal, and now I think I'm like 75-ish hours in. For those who know, it's the Casino Palace, so that will contextualize it without spoiling anything.
Yeah.
So that's I'm getting real close to wrapping it up, and it's kind of bittersweet because the story starting to kind of crest. And I can like feel that it's ramping up to end, and like, I know I still have, it being Persona 5, I've got like another 30 or 40 hours with it, but I'm starting to get a little bit like sad. I'm starting to get a little nostalgic about it of like, I don't like that's the way.
Yeah, I feel like that's the way a game should end, as opposed to there's a number of games that I've played before. Prime example being World of Light, and in and of itself, it's not a game, but the World of Light and Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, where like you're like, oh, it's about to be over. Okay, that was a fun ride, and then it turns out that was a fake out, and then there's like way more of a game than there should be. Like oversaying it's welcome. Long story short, is like, don't do that. Like Return of the King. I love Lord of the Rings, but Return of the King, it's like, okay, how many endings are you gonna have?
It's like, what do we have, 45 more minutes in this thing? Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. So that said, that's always nice when a game is like, after the game's done, you can feel like, which you haven't finished yet, so you don't know, but it sounds like from everybody else's impressions, that'll probably be the case where you'll still, think of it fondly afterwards and not overstay its welcome.
From what I've heard, the ending of Royal specifically is like amazing, top tier. So like I'm very much looking forward to it, because it's been a really great ride. And it's funny because I knew I was really enjoying the game. I had gotten into it, but I think taking time away from it and then coming back to it, I was almost worried, because I
was gonna ask actually about exactly that, because like there's a lot of times you're like, well, like I need to get on to Steve about getting back to Divinity Original Sin 2, because I know he picked that up and it's so good. But like
Steve needs to get back to Fire Emblem, which he played less than 45 minutes of, despite the fact that it was my game of the year.
Yep, that's blasphemy.
Killing me. But yeah, that's usually like a problem for me, like if I walk away from a game and I come back, like I had the problem with Horizon. Like I loved Horizon Zero Dawn, but coming back to the DLC was really tough because I was just like, I don't really remember how to play, and the rhythm's been shaken. But I think with Persona, I had to get acclimated to the controls again of like what button does what again, and that kind of thing. But because I had stopped at such a, I'd finished a palace, and then there's always like a kind of a breadth of like, waiting for the next story beat to happen after you beat one of the palaces. So it was like a perfect time to I knew exactly where I ended and I knew what was coming next. So I kind of was able to just slot right back in and just pick it right back up. And I think it's actually making me appreciate it even more because I had like, as I was wrapping up Ghost, and I was kind of ready to be done with Ghost, I was like, man, I really miss Persona. Like, I'm eager to get back to it. And then getting back to it has been just like, I'm locked back in that I'm thinking about it all the time. I can't wait to sit down and chip away at it whenever I get a minute.
I feel like especially with like turn-based RPG kind of stuff, that probably suits that well on a mechanics front.
Yes.
Whereas like, I dropped off Dark Souls when Smash came out. I dropped off at Orenstein and Smaug or whatever that boss fight is, which is like notoriously one of the most annoying / hardest. I don't know. But it's like, it's a, well-known boss fight from there. And I had tried it like 3 times. Smash came out. I played that instead. And now it's like, there's no way that my hand coordination is going to like.
Your chops are just gone.
Remember. Yeah, I'm done. I mean, like that game, I'm like, I appreciate it. I now know more or less what Dark Souls is. I don't know what happens after that, but like, whatever.
It's like, I respect it, but I can't.
Yeah,
I can't go back.
Yeah, so there's definitely that.
There's
definitely a lot of games that are like that with me. Yeah, but I'm glad that it's not been that way. That's fun.
Yeah. I'm really, really pleased because one of my best friends is a huge Persona fan, and actually a couple of my best friends are really big Persona.
I'm not a huge Persona fan. What are you talking about?
Not yet.
True.
But I couldn't connect with the first one, and Royal has so many like really
with the first Persona 5.
Yes, with
it's
Persona
that
5.
Different?
It really is. And I think the marketing of the game kind of undersells how different it is because like. Yes, I would say probably 90% of the story beats are the same. But like the quality of life changes are like next level in terms of like there are like certain abilities that totally change the flow of battle that used to be locked behind doing certain like side content stuff that now they just give you right away, and like used to be more limited in like when you could save the game, which made the pacing of it like that was the biggest problem that I had with it, where whenever you'd go into a palace, you couldn't save unless you were in a safe room or you were done with it. And it would be like, I just want to turn this off and play Netflix right now or watch Netflix right now. And I didn't have a smart TV yet. So it's like my PlayStation 4 was my media device, Yeah. So it was like this whole thing of just like, it won't let me play the game the way I want to play it. And I have never had that problem with Royal. And I think it is also benefited by the fact that I do have a smart TV. So all I use my PlayStation 4 now is gaming. But I think just those little tweaks here and there, plus the actual substantial addition of content that wouldn't have been there had I gotten further, really, really like struck the right balance and made a game that I wanted to love, but I couldn't. Like a game that I totally fell head over heels for. So I'm so glad that, all things considered with how this year played out and how it affected games and everything. And, obviously a lot of Nintendo fans specifically, it's like I'm throwing salt in the wound by saying this, but having that gap and not having games that I needed to play or felt motivated to play for coverage or anything like that, or, just like being able to go back and check things off my backlog. It's something that I am so glad that I had the experience that I did with it, because I came this close to never touching it, and knowing I would never touch it.
Yep. Yeah, that's how I feel like I'm about to be there again, where I can play backlog stuff. Because for a while, like I played Paper Mario when it came out. Prior to that, I played, I don't know, like a number of things. I was playing them as they came out. And now we're just getting to a point where, well, I'll be talking about them in just a second, but like I'm finishing up an indie game that I got a code for last week. And then at that point, I've just got backlog stuff, which is nice, I think, like having those to be able to go back to and finish up. So it should be fun. But yeah, some of those games real quick. Last week there was the Indie Direct, and there were a lot of cool games that were announced in the Indie Direct. I wanted to ask for more codes than I did, but I didn't because I was like, I won't have time for all of them. But I did play, finished 2 games and am in the middle of a third one. So I'm going to give quick little reviews, more or less, of those.
I'm very interested to hear about these because some of them piqued my interest, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to buy them.
One of these, I will say, if you don't buy it, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
I
wonder if you know which one it is so far. Maybe not. So the first one. Okay. Yeah. I mean, probably from like Twitter and stuff. But in any case, the first one I played was Raji, an Ancient Epic, which is the one in the Indian game that's like a lot of people were really excited about. And so, yeah, I played that, finished it. I was mostly done, I think, last week by the time the podcast came out. Maybe not quite. Maybe I was like halfway done or so. It's not a super long game. I think probably it took me in the realm of like 5 hours or so.
Okay. That's digestible.
Yeah. So for sure. And like some of this will be repeats from last week that I mentioned, but it does feel kind of like a top-down, stripped down a little bit Prince of Persia kind of game in some respects, except for instead of in, Egyptian kind of context, it's in Indian context. And like overall, I feel like the things that it does well are the combat. There's, I think, just 3 boss fights. And the boss fights I didn't particularly like very much. They felt more like a nuisance than anything else. It was, I mean, sort of within the same way that like a little bit how Dark Souls bosses, you're just chipping away at them all the time, but the ways in which you're chipping away at these bosses just didn't feel quite as rewarding. And it isn't like a Dark Souls kind of game in that respect. So I don't know that the bosses were done super well, but the combat with the regular enemies I enjoyed. And so I thought the combat was done pretty well. You get like 4 different weapons and they have different ways of using them in combos and stuff like that. That's fun. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed was just like the world in general, like seeing Indian stuff and all that Indian mythology, and the way the story's presented is very like, I don't know, feels both authentic and also a lot of the like story during the game, the narration is taking place from, it's like some gods that are talking to each other as
that's cool.
You're doing
that's a
stuff.
Cool framing device. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And like you as the character never talk to them, but you hear them the whole time and they're like, see, she's understanding now, that kind of thing, which is like, that's fun. And the voice acting's pretty good. So like that's helpful.
That's like tough with indie games sometimes. Like it really can be like a hit or miss thing, especially for like a younger studio, where it's like we only have so much budget, and like if you're gonna cut corners, it's gonna be with like acting, right? Because it's like you want the game to be the tightest part, right? So that's cool. That's cool to hear.
I wonder too with that if like Bollywood and that kind of thing, and the fact that acting is such a big thing in India helps reinforce it. Excuse me. Just because there probably is just a big talent pool at that point. Whereas like, there are so many indie games that are just bad voice acting. I mean, even like real like AAA games sometimes can have bad voice acting.
Even good games, right? Like plenty of good games have bad voice acting.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah, this one would like definitely was interesting to me. I wasn't sure about the the actual gameplay. Like the combat was something that like I couldn't wrap my head around. Like if it looked fun. But Steve and I talked about it on the podcast like last week, where I was very drawn to the idea of like playing a game that's made by an Indian studio, just because, like I literally have no idea what the video game scene is like in India, because like I've never heard of a game from an Indian studio. So like the idea of like one coming to the West is really cool, because I mean, like you said, like I can't even think of a game where I've seen like Indian architecture or like what's the word I'm looking for? Like mobs that are like inspired by Indian mythology. Like those are things that like, so many other ones have been done to death, or like have at least one, like God of War, like has a great take on Norse mythology in the latest one, right? Or like a whole series of games about Greek mythology, and there's Age of Mythology. There's plenty of that stuff. But, I've always been really fascinated by Indian culture, because it's like, it's the same reason I think Chinese culture is really interesting, because it's such an old culture. you know?
Yeah, right.
And like, especially compared to like being an American, you know, or like our country 200 years old, it's like you have thousands of years of culture and mythology and architecture and music to pull from. And it's like stuff that, you know, I'm so like barely exposed to as a Westerner. So like that was really, really appealing to me. So the idea that like, that's the stuff that you feel like really stood out is cool. You know, I'm glad
it was cool. Yeah, for sure. I think in terms of like the gameplay, the things like the combat was fun. But the kind of downside of it is I feel like, and I'll compare this with another one in a minute too. But what's the best way of saying this? Like it tried to have a big scope, but like it's kind of a shallow big scope as opposed to having a deep smaller scope. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. It's like a mild wide and an inch deep.
Kind of a thing. Yeah. And it's not like it, I've definitely seen some games that are way more, you know, do this more egregiously and stuff. So I didn't feel it too bad about this, but in terms of things that I would want, like, I mentioned some of this stuff last week, but like, that there's not a whole lot to interact with in the world outside of the enemies and stuff. But it's like, you can't like break pots and, you know, tables and stuff like that. It's just kind of like, you're just going through and, they're just more obstacles or anything than anything else. So all that to say, I thought it was a good game. I want to say it's $25 or $30 or whatever, which I feel like for 4 or 5 hours of gameplay, and a like sort of shallow story. I think the mythology is really interesting. The story itself is a little bit bare bones.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say if you're interested in it, probably it'll go on sale at some point. So maybe hold off till then, but it was fun. So if you're really interested in the mythology part, then I think that's the part that mostly sells it.
I think the price was the thing that gave me the most pause. Was like, that seems a little steep for what it looks like it's offering. You know? So, and based on what you've told me, I think that sounds...
Yeah. Which I do wonder in general if indies are, I don't know, this is a much bigger conversation, but because of the success of indies, if now, whereas in the past, like Stardew Valley was like, I don't know, $15, like give me $15, I guess. Now it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're an indie, but we're doing this. So it's like, they'll charge more. I don't know. It's the same kind of comparison I make with Craigslist, where people used to be like, oh, I mean, I can make money off this old junk. Like, I mean, not calling indie games junk, but like the kind of mentality of like, who would even want this kind of thing? I guess I'll try, as opposed to then now, it like you go in with high expectations of like, people are going to give me thousands of dollars for, you know, whatever.
I think it really depends on the scope of the studio, because like I think to use the Stardew Valley example, right? Like if you, and I highly recommend you do if you haven't, read Jason Schreier's book Blood, Sweat, and Pixels.
Right.
Great book about game development, and there's a chapter about Stardew Valley. And if you're not aware, like almost the entire game was made by one person over the course of like years. So obviously, it's kind of hard to quantify how much that labor should have cost or whatever. But at the end of the day, when you're only a one-person team and you only need to make as much money as you need to make for like that one person, I feel like it's easier to justify being like, my game's $15, take a shot on it, versus like, you know, this, you know, Indian development studio, which, like we said, we have no idea what the landscape of making games in India is like, how expensive it is, how hard it is to get like your game actually out on the market, how many employees they have. So it's like they might need to charge this much for it just to justify its existence in a way that like a Stardew Valley or even like a Shovel Knight that got kickstarted, like maybe doesn't need to. And, you know, I'm not sure this game might have been kickstarted, but
I think it was actually, come to think of it, but
that makes the price a little bit like more. Come on, guys. Maybe knock it down to 20.
Yeah, right.
You know?
I mean, and even then, like the Craigslist comparison is much more of a broad, like I've been thinking about that for a while. But that said, so it's not specifically to do with this game, but nevertheless, I think it's an interesting angle of the whole thing of seeing how indie games have kind of trended up in the past couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
Those lines. But the next one is Gleamlight. I played that, came out last week, was not in this Indie Direct, but was in the Indie Direct I think last December. I'm
Which
pretty
one
sure.
was?
This is the one. It looked like Hollow Knight, but stained glass, like uncanny Hollow Knight, but stained glass from the trailer.
Yeah. Okay, I remember this.
So after playing it, interesting thoughts. So one bit that's interesting about this too is they responded to it looking like Hollow, like the I don't know, the criticism of people saying that it looked too much like
The
Hollow Knight
observation.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And it seems like they were pretty resistant to it, which makes sense after having played the game. Just because the actual like world building feels pretty different as far as like what they're going for. However, definitely the way he moves, the way he like swings his sword, the sound effects, and the kind of environment definitely still gives kind of a Hollow Knight vibe. Like the aesthetic feels like it's very similar to Hollow Knight, but the actual gameplay loop is not, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And it's like, it sucks because I can totally understand them getting defensive about that, because I can only imagine how it feels like work on this game for like, 4 or 5 years or whatever, and like put, all this money and time into it, and then people are like, oh yeah, it looks like Hollow Knight. No, it doesn't. It's not Hollow Knight. Like, just play it. Give it a chance.
I feel like with that, it would have been easier maybe from, if I were, on their PR side or something, it might have been easier to say like, oh, we can see the similarities, but trust us, the gameplay is very different, or, something like that.
Right.
But nevertheless, the game, then just speaks for itself once it's out and people can actually play it. But yeah,
how did you feel about it?
I thought that there's one major way in which it shoots itself in the foot, but otherwise it's a pretty good game. The main thing is, and it almost would be a spoiler if I didn't think that this is the make it or break it for the game.
Okay.
It's built around kind of having like secret ending sort of things, and it therefore ends way sooner than it should. As in, when you beat a certain boss, credits roll, you think the game's done after literally like an hour. And then, but then if you reload your save, there's much more game to play. But there's nothing that
fakes you out.
It does. But the thing is, there's nothing to like really indicate it within the game. And I think the goal was that people would just talk about it on forums and that kind of thing. But I went and looked at like Steam reviews and stuff. And I think so many people are like, oh, this game sucks. Like it was fine and all, like the gameplay was all right, but it only was an hour long and like blah, blah, blah. But then
it only has a 5 out of 10 on Steam.
Yeah, exactly.
That's harsh.
Looking at all, I mean, some of them were like, oh, I reloaded the save and it turns out there's more. And like, it's, but yeah, a lot of the comments, it just doesn't, it doesn't signal the fact that there's more of the game. So essentially you're making your way through the world. It's not a Metroidvania, but it does have upgrade, kind of unlockable, upgrades and not upgrades, but power-ups and power-ups. What's the word?
Oh, okay.
Abilities.
Okay.
Goodness gracious. Doing a bad job. So it has unlockable
give yourself a break.
Abilities throughout the game, which do help you to traverse differently and stuff like that. But there's just no backtracking. Well, okay, that's not entirely true because the whole second part of the game is backtracking, where you're pretty much working your way down in a very linear fashion. Like there's not a lot of secrets or anything like that, but you're just fighting enemies, fight a couple bosses, fight a boss, and then reload your save after the credits roll. And then you have to work your way back up where you just came back down, which, as we can all assume, going up is harder than coming down. And there's more bosses going up and that kind of stuff. So like I had a fun time with it in the end. And like, even after the second save reload and the fake out, again, this would be a spoiler, but you have to delete your save to then come back and be able to start the game again with all of your power-ups. So again, a bit odd.
Again, like that feels like a thing that it should probably communicate to you. Like it sounds like, and I hate to do this because they got upset when they were compared to another very popular game, but it sounds like they're trying to
Undertale.
Yep.
That was exactly my thought. Yes.
It sounds like they're trying to pull off some Undertale nonsense, but like not doing a good job of it because like the way that Undertale does it, like it's in the middle of a thing happening and you're like, did the game just crash? Like what just happened? Like it fakes you out in a way that like, I don't know, it works and it feels authentic. It it's not like a thing that you could miss, you know?
Right. Exactly.
It like goats you into it, you know?
So that was exactly the comparison that I made with what I think they were trying to go for. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I even recommended it to them because after the second time, I was like, it seems like I should be able to reload another time, but I can't tell what I'm doing wrong because when I try to, it just pretty much doesn't. So I emailed them back and I was like, hey, am I missing something? Is this a bug? And they were like, oh, if you notice, the delete save data is now in red instead of in white, which is, I think, the only hint that it's really supposed to give that it's different. And I was like, and so I just told them, I was like, I think it would be helpful if it was just indicated a little bit more strongly within the game. I don't know. There's probably nothing you can change about it right now, but thanks for letting me know anyway. So all that to say, for everybody listening, if you're going to get this game, which it's $20 and it feels a little steep again, to be perfectly honest, at $20. Because even after I played through it back and forth, it probably was, I don't know. I mean, not that time justifies it or whatever, but it didn't feel like a super like new and fresh experience.
That is such a tough thing to quantify.
Save. Yeah.
You know, like the argument of like, what is a game worth? Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm with you where like, I don't think that it's about the time invested. Like that's a relevant factor.
I think there's like a scale of time plus new experiences of like, if it's a decent chunk of time of like fun gameplay, but old experiences, then that's worth this similar maybe ish, I don't know, to new experiences that's less time or something like that. You know, I'm sure there's more factors and a lot of it is also just personal preference.
Right. Yeah. Cause like, I think you can make the argument that a game like Stardew Valley, you know, is like worth way more than $15 because it's like limitless. Yeah. Like you could play it forever. But you could also like, I would make the argument that like, I would pay a lot more than $15 for Undertale. You know, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Like, you know, I'd pay $60 for Undertale, you know, because I think it's that good, you know?
But, I mean, people, you know, like people pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for World of Warcraft because they pay $15 a month. So it just like goes on and on. So as you know, as far as how to quantify that, this feels like another one of those games that like $20 feels a little bit steep to me for it. But if you haven't played Hollow Knight, I'm so sorry, play Hollow Knight. If you already have and you'd like something like it, but kind of like a little bit, I don't know, pared down a bit, I'd say check this game out, but maybe when it goes on sale a little bit. I had a fun time with it, but it's same kind of thing. It felt a little bit shallow.
Not like a
lot of
play.
Secrets. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not good at reviews. I apologize, but
no, you're doing good. One more. We got one more.
One more. This one, it's going to be easy. This is the one that I was going to say, if you're going to, you need to play this game at some point. It is so good. Spiritfarer, for those of you who don't have this document open, which is everybody but me and Pete.
This was one that really caught my eye in the Nintendo Direct, and I know Steve got into it and was enjoying it quite a bit as well.
Has he beat it at this point? Do you know?
I don't know if he has beat it yet. He hadn't when we talked about it last week. We're actually recording the show on Sunday this week. Usually we do it on Thursdays. So I'll have to find out. And if you want to find out, you'll have to go tune into the this week's episode of the podcast.
That's right.
All podcast hosting platforms. Lootpots.com.
Yeah.
But I thought this one was interesting because like it reminded me of what is it called? Fallout Shelter. You know,
it's interesting.
Like base management sim kind of game because like you have to build out your ship and everything, but like obviously it also has like a story, like conversation element, and those are like two things I really like is a good management sim and a good story game where I get to know characters and so
I've never played Fallout Shelter, so I didn't even make that comparison. I would say it feels more like Animal Crossing New Horizons, but instead of building out on an island, you're building it up on a ship. Because you start out with a small ship and you've got upgrades and stuff, and you add more and more little, buildings and resources and stuff. Pete, you've frozen. Can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, cool. Your video is just a little bit frozen, but it'll come back when it does. I'll keep. Oh, it is. Look at that. Wonderful. So the gameplay loop is again very like story stuff out the wazoo, and it meeting characters and getting to know them and stuff, and it's all super cute. And I think the big picture of this is, as opposed to earlier when I was talking about games that feel like they're too broad but not necessarily deep enough, this feels like it still has a really big scope, but it has a very focused scope at the same time. Like everything that they did, they decided we're going to make this thing be as good as it can. So like all of the activities that you do as well, like, you know, I mean, like in Stardew Valley, you know how when you fish, it's like, it's a little fishing mini game or whatever.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing with this, with all the different activities. So like when you chop down trees, I guess that's one of the less interesting mini games, but you just have to like saw to the left and to the right and stuff. And that's not too bad. But a lot of the other ones feel like if you do a good job at the thing, you get rewarded better. But if you don't do a good job at it, you just get normal rewards.
Yeah,
so for example, yeah, exactly. So if you bring in logs to the sawmill, it's a little mini game where you've got to like saw kind of along the lines as it, so like the logs coming left to right, and then you've got to like keep up your cursor or whatever with the little line that comes across it.
Okay.
And the better you do at that, the more planks you get out of it. So all this pretty meaningless outside of, you know, if you're not playing the game. But the big picture is that with all these things, if you master the way that you're doing them, it'll be more efficient, which just feels more fun and all that. But yeah, all the animation is so beautiful. And like, yeah, this game, I think it's also $30. Is that right?
It is $30.
Yeah.
To give you a baseline, because I called this out before, it has a 10 out of 10 on Steam.
Yeah.
But if you click on it, it says 95% positive. So that's ringing endorsement either way.
Yeah, exactly. So this, I mean, I would definitely say if you're into like Animal Crossing type things, or something about it at the beginning and still kind of here and there gives me like a little bit of a Steven Universe vibe. Like,
oh, you just sold me, brother. You just sold me. I'm in.
Just like the joyfulness of it and like the interactions. And then it's like not all of the interactions that you have are always happy, but they're always heartfelt. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so that's
speaking my language.
It's so good. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm still in the middle of it. I don't know how much time I've put into it so far, but I can definitely tell I've still got a little ways to go. And I think if you want to like 100% it, you know, get all the upgrades to everything, then I don't know how long it'll take, but a decent chunk of time, you know, maybe like 20 hours or something. According
to thegamer.com, it's 20 hours. Yes.
Hey, for completionist or just to beat?
So I just clicked to how long to beat. And for main story, it says 2.5 hours on how long to beat. Main and extras is 30. Completionist is 42.
How 2.5? I don't even know how you
21 and a half.
Oh,
my bad.
You did.
I totally misspoke. I meant 21 and a half is for the main story. Excuse me.
Oh, boy, howdy. Okay, that makes sense. Cool, yeah. So in that case, I mean, that's plenty of gameplay of like, and every minute. It's like, I mean, same kind of thing as Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley, where you always feel like there's, well, especially the beginning of Animal Crossing, where you just always feel like there's tons of things you can go do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like there's a tiny bit of stress where it's like, oh, I want to make sure I get enough things done or whatever. And there's a day and night cycle, but there's not a day of the week or day of the month cycle like in Stardew Valley, which, to be honest, always stresses me out. And I stopped playing Stardew Valley at one point because I was, other things came up, and I put like 85 hours into it or something ridiculous. Well, that's not that ridiculous for Stardew Valley players, but
yeah, right. Like the hardcore, because that's like probably how much I put into it.
Yeah.
And I remember mentioning that, and like, you know, even my fiance Sarah will like laugh and be like, "Oh, those are rookie numbers." You know?
Yeah. So I mean, I put a decent amount of time into it, but I would sometimes, if I felt like I had an unproductive day, just restart the day completely, because I just like didn't want to get to the next season without having done certain things or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Whereas this,
your time.
Exactly. And this doesn't feel like any of that. So
this is why you should play Persona. That's a huge part of Persona.
Yeah.
Making good use of your time and everything, you know?
I should play Persona. If it comes to Switch, I would be more than happy to play it. But
that's a coward's answer. I made that excuse for years.
100% it's a coward's answer. I love coward's answers when it comes to stuff like this. But that is That's all the games that I'm playing. In any case, that's all the games you're playing, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, sorry for the YouTube viewers. I'm like ducking out of the screen so I can plug my Switch in and buy Spiritfarer.
Yes, sold him on it. It's so good, man. I'm very enjoying it. So those are those games. Let me know if you're interested in any of those games in the comments, because I'd like to know if we sold anybody on any of them too.
I am interested.
Yep. But you know who else tried to sell us on stuff is Nintendo. Tried to sell us on some new games coming out with their Nintendo Direct Mini Partners presentation this week. And it was rough, if we're being fully honest.
Not a great one. And I was one of the two people on the internet who defended the first one, because I was like, hey, Shin Megami Tensei 4 is a big deal, everybody. You better listen up. But this one...
Yeah, I do wonder in their minds what we're not even, to be perfectly, we're not going to go through all the, like normally with directs, we'll be like this game and this game and this game and this game. Were there any standout ones to you? Because I don't think there was, besides maybe Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memories.
Man, all right. I'm going to use this as an opportunity because I have a lot of feelings about that game. Cool. I feel like that game is like, so I used to love Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 were my jam as a child. There was several years where I would have told you that Kingdom Hearts 2 was my favorite game of all time.
Nice.
I did not and could not finish Kingdom Hearts 3. I would love to go back to it and try again someday, but Lord knows if I will. It's Persona 5 vibes all over there. And this is this is so exemplary of like my exhaustion with this franchise. I'm at the point where I'm like, no, Kingdom Hearts 3 should have been it. We should just be done with this now. Yeah. And I know that saying that, like, the Kingdom Hearts Mafia is going to come for me. Like, I've just revoked my Kingdom Hearts fan card by saying that publicly. But, like, I think I'm at a point where I'm like, this is what we're doing. Maybe just let it end.
Yeah.
Maybe we just walk away from Kingdom Hearts for a while.
Yeah.
Because it took, like, 2 decades for me to get – I was in junior high school when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. And then me as a nearly 30-year-old man had to try to reconnect with Kingdom Hearts. I guess I wasn't nearly 30 at the time, but – either way, it was it was too long, and then now you're telling me we got a rhythm game? No thanks. I'm good. It
is so weird, too, the fact that I haven't played a single Kingdom Hearts game, for the record, for anybody who wants to know. But the fact that they mentioned, like, relive all of your Kingdom Hearts memories. And you're like, if I'm a Switch owner who hasn't, I have no Kingdom Hearts memories. Like,
why don't you put Kingdom Hearts on the Switch first, Square Enix? Don't give me that.
Yeah, so I don't know. That was very new. I mean, that's awesome that it's coming for, you know, anybody who wants to play it or something. But I feel you. Do you think most Kingdom Hearts fans feel like you do about that, or you? I don't know.
So the thing is, I think that there are two kinds of Kingdom Hearts fans in this world. I think that there are real Kingdom Hearts fans, and they eat every drop of this nonsense up. And I mean that with all the love in the world. Okay? I consider myself one of you. But then there's, I think, fans like me who are like lapsed fans where it's like, I really love Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. I've played probably 90% of the side games. I think there's 2 or 3 that I've missed. Like I never played the one on PSP just because I didn't have access to a PSP at that time. So like I have very small gaps in my Kingdom Hearts experience, but I'm not one of the people who like can tell, like I couldn't really explain the lore to you, even though I've experienced it. You know what I mean? So I'm I have a real soft spot in my heart for Kingdom Hearts and a real nostalgia for it. And like, I love the music and like, it elicits something from me that's very genuine, but in the same breath, I like can see it for all of the nonsense and like how, you know, like when you're like, oh, I've never played a Kingdom Hearts game. Like my response to that is like, cool, don't. Like just don't do it. It's because it's, I don't know, man. You're like, will you like it? Maybe. Like you might. It's good in some ways, but it's also frustratingly obtuse in a lot of other ways.
I wonder, something about this makes me I never watched Game of Thrones, but at this point, I don't think I'm ever going to watch Game of Thrones because I know that people like, I don't really know how it ends, but I know people just hated the last season so much that it makes me like, what's the point of watching the
Why
earlier
invest
ones?
in this just to be upset?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've tried to get my wife to watch Lost several times, but she knows how it ends. She knows everybody was mad about the ending and all that stuff. And so she just like can't.
It's like, why bother?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I get it, but it also is really good for a lot of it. But at the same time, if you're always thinking about it in the context of like where it ended up, then it's like, that makes it hard to enjoy it in the present, you know?
Yeah, I had a conversation about that with a coworker actually, where he was a huge Game of Thrones fan, and then like was so mad at the last season where he's like, I'll never watch it again because it's tainted my experience. Because now it's like I watch it and I watch these character arcs being set up, and I know that they go nowhere. I know that they are not sat. So it's like, why even?
Yeah. Which is why. Have you watched Fringe before?
No.
Oh man, it's so good. If you want a show that like the second time watching it, I started watching it a second time and then they took it off whatever streaming service. And so like I've got it on DVD, but I'm so lazy. I'm not going to put in a new DVD all the time. But nevertheless, that's one of J.J. Abrams' shows that I feel like finishes with like, it closes up 95% of the story loop or whatever. Like there's little bits and pieces that's like, what happened to them? And I just don't think about them. But when you watch it a second time, you'll go back through and see stuff in season one. It's like, this was already in their mind from season one for the rest of it. So that's a little, all that stuff. But back to the direct.
Speaks volumes about how interesting this direct was that we're just like, let's talk about TV.
Yeah, exactly.
So to answer your question, the one thing that stood out to me as being something I might actually be interested in was
World of Tanks Blitz.
No. That's another game where it's like, I know it's existed for like 10 years and it's like
I didn't even know it existed.
Deal in China, but like I've never played it, no interest.
Yeah.
But Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. I really loved Puyo Puyo Tetris. It was my favorite, like one of my favorite games on the Switch when the Switch was a young console and had a very, very small library. The thing is, I don't know that I want a 2. Like I have the first one, and
that's what I was wondering. What's different? What's so different about it than the first one? Because I didn't really play the first one, to be honest.
So it says it includes all the modes from the original game. Plus there's special items and challenges, new skill battle mode, which has character-based skills and item cards that can be equipped to power the team and quickly turn the tables on opponents. In adventure mode, players will traverse blah 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 blah. There's a new story, new characters. I don't know, man. It's like that doesn't sound interesting to me.
The thing, like, it feels like a similar question to like, why is there a Splatoon 2 and you can just have Splatoon 1? I mean, maybe it's probably different than that, but like one of those things where it's just continuing, but it's not even bringing it to a new platform. I don't know.
No, it's just like, it just feels, it's like, hey, here's more. And it's I didn't really like do the story stuff in that game anyway. Like I just played the game, you know? And like that still works. And I have Tetris 99.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, man. Like, and if that's the best thing and I'm like, who needs it? It's like, not a strong direct.
No, for sure. And I mean, that's not to say if you're out there and you're like, I loved that they talked about Jump Force Deluxe Edition coming to Switch.
That's true.
You know, something like that. That's awesome. But yeah, I think all things considered, I don't even feel like talking about anymore the games themselves, but more just like, we have a Q&A question, actually. This is from YouTube community. Normally our Q&A is a little bit later, but I pulled this one up because it's relevant. And Matthias, I don't know how you pronounce your name, but it's something like that. Thanks for commenting. Asked, is Nintendo done with general directs? Will there ever be one taking place in the future? And to be honest, we've talked about directs so much. I don't want to go into it super long, but I feel like it's worth talking about for a little bit.
I will, if you want to be really, really succinct about it, I would say no and yes. They're not done with general directs. There will definitely be another direct in the future. I don't know why people are so committed to that narrative. Like, I know that there are a lot of people who have these very weird caveats where they're like, well, an indie world doesn't count as a direct and an Animal Crossing direct isn't a direct. So there hasn't been a general direct in 500 days, whatever. Even if that's true, I don't think that means anything, right? Like in every single one of these directs that we've had in 2020, and there have been directs in 2020, in my opinion, they've all said that these have been affected by COVID and they're subject to change.
Yeah.
Nintendo has already embarrassed themselves by announcing games early and then having us be like, where are they though? Look at Metroid Prime, right? Like there was that story how they were like just hiring a director. Like that game's years away. And they totally shot themselves in the foot and whipped people up into a frenzy and then had to make a public apology about it. They don't want that. Yeah. So if there's any level of disruption of their normal plan, of their normal schedule, why announce something if you're not sure that you can get it across the finish line? Especially when they've shown with like Paper Mario, right? That wasn't in a direct. All they had to do was announce it and release it, and it broke records for Paper Mario games.
Yeah.
Like, they have the benefit of the Switch and the fact that Switch players are hungry for software, and they'll figure it out. You know, that like even people who don't like care about video games the way that we do, they just have a Switch and want stuff on it. They go on the shop and they see Paper Mario. They'll be like, "Oh, cool, Paper Mario, great, got it."
I think the tricky thing is, so in my opinion, I agree. I don't think we're done with general directs. But also, if we were, like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. But I suspect it's possible 2020 maybe down the general. Like, we're kind of running out of time for them to announce stuff for 2020 with general directs, but that's not to say that they're done forever necessarily. Or I don't think that it necessarily means that they're done with them. I feel like probably the next couple of weeks would be their last chances to do it. And if they don't, then like, don't be expecting it, because I said that obviously, but if they were going to, it would be within the first couple of weeks of September to announce anything else for the holiday season, first party or third party. And if they don't, then 2020 is, maybe going to get another couple Twitter drops, but that's probably it. And then we'll just kind of be moving on to 2021.
Yeah, right. And I think that's probably true. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't another general direct this year, but I think for me, the smoking gun of the fact that directs are not going anywhere is that they are putting out directs right now that are called general partner directs, and you might not be satisfied with the quality of them, but they wouldn't still be using the direct brand name if they were trying to sunset it. So I think right now they're gun shy about announcing big things, and
which I mean,
get
like,
back to it
I
when
think
they feel confident.
I get that on one hand. I mean, I definitely get it. I feel like they're being overly conservative in some regards.
I would definitely agree. Yeah, because the thing is, right, like, the tease we got for Breath of the Wild 2 was super hype, and people loved it. And, like, if they just gave us similar levels of, hey, this exists and it's coming, we don't have a firm date for you, people would not be complaining the way that.
Because I think the thing, too, is, like, so I put out a tweet earlier that was a meme. It was the jealous boyfriend meme, or jealous girlfriend, whatever, distracted boyfriend meme of, like, Nintendo in 2020. And, like, pretty much the gist being that they're doing fine monetarily. They're selling tons of Switches and all that. And so I think at this point, it's possible that their internal rhetoric is something to the effect of, like, okay, well, we don't have a lot of new stuff coming out, but we can, like, kind of hold over until 2021, and then we'll sell new stuff then. But, like, for right now, existing Switch users are just going to have to buy, like, what we have, and we'll just focus on getting new people in the door. And my only problem, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I think my only problem with that, because in theory, on a money sense, that makes sense. My only problem with it is whether or not it alienates or loses the attention of existing users, because, and thereby not only just, like, people being like, Switch isn't getting anything, I'm just going to sell my Switch, which, like, I've had one or two friends in real life do that, be like, I played Breath of the Wild, there's nothing else really coming out for me. And they're more like core gamers or whatever. But what it could mean also is that, like, any of the more toxic of the Switch fan base that are like, Nintendo's not doing anything, because I feel like most of us and most of you listening to this are somewhere in the middle ground of, like, like, this kind of sucks, but, whatever. But if somebody were to ask one of those kind of more less more erratic Switch fans, is it worth buying a Switch this holiday? Like, should I buy a Switch in 2020? Then there's a good chance that if all of the community's hype is really bad or whatever, that you just be like, nah, don't even worry about it.
I think the response to that, though, because I think you're right that there are some people that feel that way, but I have to say, like, and I make no bones about saying this kind of stuff on our show, where it's like, I think you're a baby. If you, no, honestly, like, I think it's like a very much like an entitlement thing of like, they owe me games, man. I bought a Switch. Like, I don't think that you can ever make the argument that it's a bad time to buy a Switch. Because if you're buying a Switch in 2020, in holiday 2020, you haven't played Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart 8 and Super Mario Odyssey and Smash Brothers and Animal Crossing and Pokemon and the DLC that came out for Pokemon this year and Fire Emblem, and the list goes on and on and on. And not to mention the amazing library of indies that are available. So even if you're just I only play big Nintendo games gamer and I'm not interested in playing indies or anything like that, if you're a new Switch owner, there's like 12 really, really high quality AAA Nintendo games that you could buy brand new with your brand new Switch and have, a wonderful old time and be busy and be occupied. And I think the thing is that the average gamer that doesn't, or not the average, I guess the average gamer, the not like core person, right?
Right, yeah.
Who maybe only buys 2 or 3 games a year, or only plays, 1 game a year, right? Like, they could probably just play Breath of the Wild for a whole year and they'd be set, right? Like,
honestly, yeah.
That kind of person doesn't need the level of software that you or I do. Right? Or that the angry Nintendo fans right now, the disgruntled Nintendo fans feel like they need. So I think the reality of the situation is there's more than enough games to keep a new player occupied for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And, for us to be in 2020, the year of our Lord, the 3rd year in the Nintendo's life cycle, and for that to be the first year where there's kind of a software drought. And I say kind of because Animal Crossing came out this year, and whether or not you like Animal Crossing is a juggernaut. Yeah. And Pokemon had DLC, and Paper Mario, the fastest selling Paper Mario game, came out this year. And we're getting ports.
Which, for the record, was a great game for anybody who didn't play it. Go on.
You love that, right? And we got ports of Xenoblade, which another game that was really well received and sold really well. And Pikmin 3 coming up, which is a game that I'm really excited to play later this year. So even if it is a slower year, it's not a bad year. It's just a soft year. And soft years happen in every console's life cycle. It's just right now, I think it feels really bad because A, you're stuck at home and you want games to play. B, PS4 is going out with a bang and has put out a ton of really, really great hot games this year that were exclusive to the platform, right? With Final Fantasy and Ghost and Last of Us that were like games that will be in that conversation. Yeah. And Xbox and Sony are like, look, new consoles, new games, next generation.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like that's a really big thing is like the comparison there of like, look at all these games they're announcing and we're not announcing any.
Yeah, and you're
but like in reality, it's like they kind of have to announce all those games and they've been holding on to those for a long time. So like it's, not a fair comparison to necessarily make anyway. But I do feel like, Nintendo is playing things closer to the chest than they probably should. But at the same time, I get it. Exactly. It's not like I'm not mad about it and I'm happy to wait. And so, but the thing that has been speculated and is very possible, and this leads us into our next bit, is whether they're like kind of stockpiling some things for 2021 to make that a bigger year because of the rumors that we had this week, which is what I made my video on, the Nintendo Switch Pro. And
I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to talk about this one, brother. This is a very interesting topic.
Yeah. So, Nintendo Switch Pro. I made a video called "The Problems of the Nintendo Switch" or "The Problem of the Nintendo Switch Pro," so the premise is that there's kind of 3 main issues that are things that it needs to overcome to be able to do well. The first being just like where it fits into the market, whether it's just how it differentiates itself from the original one and makes itself feel like a worthwhile purchase, whatever.
And like in which way does it do that? Because like we've seen historically, obviously with the 3DS probably being like the most direct analog from Nintendo, but even with like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X? Yeah, One X. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
okay.
that, and then the second bit being just like the power side of it. Like, does it try to be super, super powerful and then have to have exclusive games? And I said, no,
no way.
Just for so many reasons, it's not going to do that. Or do the new Nintendo 3DS kind of route, which is what I was saying probably would be the case. And then the last bit of just like the problem of the fact that right now we're just talking about it so much means that like already, and I saw several comments on the video, which just goes to reinforce it, of people being like, but maybe I should wait for the Switch Pro and not buy a Switch now, because like they still are rumors. So it's still possible. Yeah. We've been having these rumors from day one. I mentioned in that video, and people know, my friend Chad like legit didn't buy a Switch for 3 years because there kept being more rumors of a Switch Pro. And he was like, I'm just going to wait for a Switch Pro. And then finally Animal Crossing came out, and his wife was like, can we get a Switch? And it was like, yeah.
So I think the thing is, though, and not to like discount that as like that is a consumer,
it's
that
a small
exists. Audience. Right. And I think this is a problem again, that like we as commentators and as like, I'm a capital G gamer,
right?
Who like tweets about games and listens to podcasts or records podcasts or makes YouTube videos. Like, you think of all gamers as being people who play, who are like you, and like you don't think about like, you know, Johnny Two Games or you know, his 5-year-old daughter or you know, like whatever, right? Like, and those people are people who buy a ton of video games, and that like gamers don't count as part of the market, even though they're a huge part of the market, especially for Nintendo. Right. Yeah. Like, as the family friendly, like if you're a, you know, suburban mom who's 40 years old and doesn't know anything about video games, you know what a Nintendo is. And it's like, great, I can get that. My kid can play Mario. Fine. Great.
I mean, even on top of that, like, so another friend of mine recently got a Switch that he's a dad. He plays games. I mentioned him. Or I actually interviewed his son on a video like 3 weeks ago. And
oh my God, I remember that. Was precious.
Yeah, it was so cute. But anyways, so they finally got a Switch last week. And like thinking about them, even if I was like, hey, Chris, by the way, a Switch Pro is coming out in, 6 months or whatever, he'd be like, cool. I would still have bought the original one. Like,
he's not the cheap one.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think once it comes out, there's like 10% of people are going to buy maybe not even 10%, will buy the Switch Pro first and foremost. And then everybody else buying it is you and me, who are like, I'm going to upgrade to the Switch Pro, that kind of thing. So like, it's not even that much of an issue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does 1080 in handheld. Yeah. I'll sign up for that. It's like, do I need this? Heck no. Will I buy it? Heck yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are so we've got like, I pulled 3 comments to talk about, but what are your expectations of what you would think based on these rumors or whatever else, the Switch Pro to be like, launch window, any of that kind of stuff?
I have a hard theory now where I think it lands. So my expectations for it as a unit are, I think it will be a substantial but marginal increase in power. Like, I think it will be very similar to like the PS4, or 1X or whatever, where it's like it doesn't have software that's exclusive to it, but it plays all software better, right? And maybe it's a 1080p screen instead of 720, right? Or I don't think that they're gonna mess with 4K probably until 2 generations from now. Yeah. But I think the idea of it being like, oh well, like yes, it all it does is play your games, but it plays them better. And like, very much like where you could get the, you brought up the new 3DS. And while that did have exclusive software, I'm thinking more like how the big selling point of them exemplifying the power was like, look how much faster it loads Smash, right?
Oh,
like it loads it in 2 seconds and it runs smoother. And like, I think that's going to be the sell. And I think when they're going to put it out, I actually think it's going to come out in March around the same time as the original Switch did. And I also think that's when Breath of the Wild 2 is going to come out. So I think that it's going to be very much like hey, you love your Switch. It's its 4th anniversary. Here's the Switch Pro, along with, guess what? The sequel to the best game that you played on the Nintendo Switch, Breath of the Wild.
Or of all time.
Right? And don't you want to have your brand new Switch with your brand new Breath of the Wild experience? And yeah, absolutely I do. Are you kidding me? I'll buy that bundle day one for no reason, but I'll do it.
I think So, I mean, that's the kind of game that you want to get new hardware for. It's just like, if they announce Animal Crossing, like you can buy a Switch Pro and Animal Crossing, like the same audience, the same me's in the world would be like, I mean, yeah, I'll get a Switch Pro and I'll get Animal Crossing, but that's not the thing that's like making me excited for the Switch Pro. Whereas Breath of the Wild is like, yes, I would like to play that.
It's like, oh, remember how great Hyrule Field was, but it was kind of frustrating that there were frame rate problems? Not anymore. Like, here you go. You can walk through a forest and the leaves fall and it's fine. Like that's all they need to show me, really, because I love my Switch and I don't feel like I need an upgrade. But if you can give me one that's like more storage, snappier memory, just like little quality of life changes like that, and the price is not insane, yeah, man, I'm all about it.
I mean, and honestly, with the new 3DS thing, I wonder if the reason they were exclusive games with it was less for the power reasons and more for the extra nub. Like, because I'm pretty the ones that I can think of off the top of my head are Xenoblade Chronicles. Yeah, so okay, Xenoblade Chronicles, Monster Hunter, something.
Minecraft is one of them.
Minecraft,
and I think there's one more.
So, but all of those use the C stick for control. I feel like that's the whole reason that those are exclusive games to it, and that's it. So that said, I don't think there would be any differences like that with this Switch to need to have exclusives, and I just don't think anybody's going to want to put exclusives out because like install base and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to segment your market. Like it doesn't make sense. And maybe like with the 3DS, you could make the argument that it's like they're experimenting with something there, but like I don't. Those games all sold really poorly. So I think
learned their lesson.
Like, lesson learned, right? Yeah. It's like you don't want to. You're already making more money by selling me a premium unit. You don't need to like sell me on it. Like I think, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I'd like to think that they would learn the lesson that I think Sony and Microsoft did a great job with that with the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X, where it was very much like. If you like the snotty kind of, gamer retort of like, well, why do I even need this? Like, I don't have a 4K TV. I don't care. And they're like, well, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Make it as seamless as possible. But it's like, if you want to upgrade, here you go.
Here's the option.
But then like, you just do it. And then that's it. So, yeah, I mean, like I upgraded from the original Switch to the barely revision of
the battery life.
Yeah. And like, it's been great. And it was very easy to do it. So like, I feel like it'll be the same thing, but something they actually know. So here's some comments and we'll keep talking. But here's the comments. Pablo Arias said, the new 3DS route is probably the one they'll take, but I think with the right marketing and trying to keep compatibility with the original Switch, but slowly moving away from it, which they kind of did with the 3DS. They could take advantage of the generational leap that's happening at the end of the year to launch substantially better hardware closer to PS5/Xbox Series X. I've always said I wish every game was playable on a Switch, and that is what would make me buy a new one. There's already some impressive ports, but if they could somehow manage to get new releases on the Switch at the same time as other consoles, I think many users would move to the Pro.
That I don't think will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I agree with what Pablo's putting down, like in spirit of that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't think Nintendo's interested in doing that. And I think that particularly when you look at how well Animal Crossing sold and stuff, like third parties are not why people own a Switch. And I know that there are lots of gamers, particularly like, the diehard Nintendo fans who are like, well, I want to play everything on my Switch. I only want to have to own a Switch. I don't want these other units. I just don't think that that's the game that Nintendo's playing. And I especially don't think that if they were going to do that, they would do that with a like 0.5. Because to the point that, you even made in your own comment here, Pablo, it's like they would keep compatibility with the original Switch. That by necessity means that the kind of games that you're talking about couldn't exist. Because if you want it to not split the market, you can't put out games that only work on the new Switch Pro, whatever. And it won't be possible for the kinds of, like top level PS5, Xbox games that we're talking about to run on the Switch as it is. The Switch as it is already less powerful than the PS4 and the Xbox One base level. So it's not going to happen.
I could see down the road maybe kind of seeing what what Xbox has going on, where like at this point, if you go into a store, you're probably more likely to see an Xbox One X than you are an Xbox in that kind of sense of like new people will probably have more. I mean, this is like pretty far down the road, but like that the Nintendo Switch OG will kind of phase out and the Pro would be, what new users are buying more.
It's possible.
But I still don't think there would be exclusive games, to it, because at that point there's people who are like, yeah, I bought the Switch in 2020 and I want to keep playing it for several years. And I just don't really see that part happening.
I think Nintendo's going to keep console generations, right? Like I'm with you in terms of the idea of them putting out a Switch Pro and then slowly phasing out the original unit in favor of that, or
I mean, that's what they did with the DS, the 3DS, and all that kind of stuff. So like and then the Game Boy and all that kind of stuff. That for their handhelds, especially, like that model has worked. But I think probably what it'll do is as the Nintendo Swap comes out, the Nintendo Switch Pro will keep going under it, but the Nintendo Switch will phase out. So it'll be kind of like
in the same way they do with the 3DS, right? Where they're like, the 3DS is not going away until people stop buying it, and then it goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
And to me, I think the kind of stuff that you're talking about, Pablo, of like wanting to push that's hardware that's like closer to PS5, Xbox Series X, you got to wait for Switch 2. And I think even then, don't expect it to be that powerful. It won't be. Like I don't think that's the game Nintendo's trying to play. But I think they've proven they don't need to.
Right, exactly. I still stand by that cloud gaming would be a good intermediate solution. But
dude,
it's not going to happen because I think it would be with xCloud, and
that would be amazing though. And I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. I really don't. Like I'm not saying that I predict that happening, but if there was a Nintendo Direct where Nintendo was like, or an Xbox event, right? And they're like, Phil Spencer comes out and he's like, we're so excited to bring the power of xCloud to our free Nintendo.
I mean,
that could be a thing.
The thing is, there was, I think Phil Spencer himself said some quote to the effect of that they're trying to get it on all platforms and stuff. They're obviously having trouble with iOS, but I want to say there was some quote where he mentioned like trying to get Nintendo to do it, and Nintendo was like, we're going to pass on Games Pass, because there are a lot of questions that come up with that, like, does Nintendo get a cut of those like how does the money exactly work? So like that's definitely a thing. But that said, if they could at least work together on the xCloud part of it, that would be something.
I'll tell you what,
Games Pass has to be the way.
I'll tell you what though, I would pay extra for that.
Yeah,
like if Nintendo was like, hey, we'll put it on Switch, but you need to pay an additional $5 a month.
Yep.
For us to get a kickback.
Honestly,
I'd be like, forget it. You kidding me? Sure.
Yep.
Why not?
Could say, okay. And here's the other thing that had come up at the time too, is what does that mean for games that are on Game Pass, but also for sale on Switch? Because that is the one thing is like, do you have a special version of Game Pass that doesn't have Spiritfarer on it? Or what do you do?
Or maybe like Game Pass games don't work. You can only do it with games that you've purchased on Xbox. But even then, it's like, how does that work? Like, Nintendo would have to get a cut, and I don't know how that's going to play out. But like, I'll say this: it literally could happen. Literally could. We'll see. Yeah. I would love that.
It's very true. I mean, I think everybody at this point is also used to the model of, because like the question of like, well, what happens? Like, I've bought it. What happens when the service goes away or whatever? Everybody's used to Netflix and used to whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I pay for these things, but like, I also know eventually I won't have Stranger Things access because I'm going to stop paying for Netflix when it, something.
You sacrifice ownership for convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
And access to like more content,
Yeah. Next comment comes from Jeff, who says, I think it's still too early for a Switch Pro, definitely on how successful the Switch is right now. In my opinion, I would prefer they put more money into the first-party games instead, but if a Switch Pro does end up happening, at least a built-in streaming services like PS4 has.
I don't know. I don't agree. I don't think it's too early for a Switch Pro. I think we're coming up on 4 years, which I think at best is halfway through the life cycle.
Right.
At worst, you maybe have 2 or 3 more years. Yeah, like it could be, we could be winding down here. So I think, like, I get what you're saying in terms of like how successful the Switch is already, But I think it's the same thing with when people like there was a huge market of like, again, us kind of gamers who were like, who would ever buy a Switch Lite? This is a terrible move. It's like, well, it's not for you. You know, like it's for families, it's for kids, it's to have a second unit, whatever. Not to say that there aren't core gamers who have them. You know, I'm not trying to like, you know, rain on anyone's
you
parade.
offended a lot of people just now.
I'm so sorry. But with this, like, I think that's another mistake that people fall into of being like, I don't want them to spend money on this. I want them to spend money on games. Like the money they spend on hardware R&D is not that same money. And like Nintendo's fine. Them developing another console isn't taking away from game development. If anything,
it's fully separate teams that are working on stuff. It's
potentially a new revenue stream.
Yeah, right. And the thing is too, I mean, I mentioned this in the video, but like, I think the way that at least I and you as well are envisioning the Pro is it's additive rather than replacement or whatever.
Or like iterative.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You know, it's not as much of a next step as I think a lot of people are thinking of it.
Yeah, because in that case, if this were like phasing out the original Switch, because the only reason I said phasing out the Switch is just like, like several years down the road where it's just like they're going to make more stock of whichever one they want people to be buying or whichever one is selling more, something like that.
Or like as they can sell it for less money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And because that's what they did, like looking at the 3D or the DS and the 3DS, honestly.
3DS,
it's just like
DS family.
all of those, if you look at like when each thing came out, it was like the DS, the DS Lite, the DSi, the DSi XL, 3DS, 3DS XL, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And it like kind of tears down. But
they phase out one as one becomes the standard, right?
But
like,
that's also because they are all
Game Boy. There's not a Game Boy Color.
Yeah, but it is because they're ultimately the same console, just kind of different iterations of the same thing, as opposed to, if this were a next gen Switch, that would be a whole different story. It would be too early for that. 1,000%. Like this is going to be selling the same games, just running a bit better.
Right.
Last comment. Sorry. It's from Banjo Bob, who says, all I really want from Switch revision is Bluetooth headphone support, better Wi-Fi chip with faster speeds and longer range, and Joy-Con drift to be definitively fixed. Anything beyond that would be nice, but I don't expect a huge power increase in performance or anything.
You got the right expectations, Bob. This is a reasonable comment, and I really appreciate it.
There were a lot of reasonable comments, yeah.
I want 4K streaming, I want all the PlayStation exclusive. No, guys, all right, look, just like dream for a better Wi-Fi chip. That's attainable.
I know somewhere, Pat Green kept saying a camera, and that would be interesting. I don't know. I feel like it would be, as long as it doesn't have games that are based on it, that would be the only problem because then they are exclusive. But if you could have games that have extra features it's like, if you have a Switch Pro, you can use the camera because that would be fun. So who's to say? It'd be a fun time. Any last thoughts on the Switch Pro before we get into our last segment of Q&A?
I'm looking forward to it. And I hope that it lives up to my expectations, which are, I think, very, very measured. So, I just really want a nicer screen and better battery life. Like that's really it. If they did
you get the better battery life Switch?
I have a launch Switch still.
Okay, gotcha.
I didn't think it was worth upgrading for that.
The only reason I really got it was for that, and then I gave Ashley my old one, so it just like worked out well in that kind of
I bought
sense.
Sarah a Switch right before that one came out. Missed it by just a few months.
But, that much.
Fine. Yeah. My launch Switch is in surprisingly good shape for how much I use it. So I'm good until they really give me I want something that's like a nice meaty upgrade, you know?
Yep. I feel you. Good stuff. All right. Now we get to the last section of the podcast. This is Q&A. We've got a lot of questions, so we'll just see how these go.
Let's dig in.
First of all, from YouTube community, here we go. The Pagan Gang, I don't know.
Pagonging?
The Pagonging said, what's your favorite Nintendo franchise? And before you say it, I feel like we can guess each other's. So on
three?
Yes, I guess. All right. One, two, Pokemon. I think yours is Pokemon.
Yeah. That's the right guess.
Cool.
Pokemon is I liked games before Pokemon, but Pokemon was what made me fall in love with games. Yeah. And I still love to play competitive to this day. If you're watching the YouTube video, my Blastoise behind And I have this is actually a fun little thing I just bought. It's a vintage Japanese Pikachu set.
That's
and, like the
real
box
cool.
is in perfect shape.
That's awesome.
Beautiful. Love it.
That's like the original, like kind of chubby Pikachu.
Oh yeah.
Love
Look,
it.
we got there's a chonky boy on this box. Look at him.
That's so good.
The back is probably better.
Oh, classic.
OG.
Look at Ash with his like super wide set eyes. What's going on there?
I know, yeah. He looks really awkward, especially in reverse.
This is only barely related, and mostly it's actually not at all. But I was over at my friend Chris and Steph's house, the ones that just bought a Switch, and their daughter was watching some Beauty and the Beast Christmas movie from like around the time Beauty and the Beast came out back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
And whoever did the animation on it was like a B tier, team or something. And
it was like a direct-to-video thing.
Yes, exactly. There were so many shots where Belle's eyes are like out here, and it was so awful and funny at the same time. It was great. That is all.
So to guess yours, I don't know that I have like an immediate, like I feel like with mine, like I talk about Pokemon so much every time I come on the show. I don't know yours off the top of my head.
For what it's worth, we've mentioned it a couple of times in this video already. I mean, in this podcast already.
We did?
We did.
What's your favorite? What? I feel like an idiot
Zelda.
now.
You silly.
Okay. See, I was going to guess Zelda, but I guess it wasn't a guess. You probably said it, and I just didn't clock it.
I don't mean we talked about what it was. I just meant we talked about Zelda in this podcast.
Okay.
So,
I see what you're saying.
Like
you told me that, and I forgot already? Do I need to go to the doctor?
I mean, I mentioned that it's the best game of all time, Breath of the Wild specifically, but,
true.
outside of that. Yeah. No, but I mean, Pokemon was what got me into gaming at all. That was just the first game I ever played was Pokemon Blue. But
of course.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that Zelda is the thing that got me back into gaming almost says more, I think, about it at this point in my life.
I feel that.
So, because I hadn't played really anything at all prior to getting a Wii again in 2016, and then played Twilight Princess on it. Which a lot of people don't like Twilight Princess, but I was like, man, Zelda doing the most. Good job, Zelda. And it was a fun time. And then played, a little bit more stuff, but then Breath of the Wild came out, and then that was the thing that really got its hooks back into me.
Just reawoke the passion.
Burning.
How could it not? I mean, Breath of the Wild, man. Like Breath of the Wild, not my favorite game, but I would make the argument. I don't know that there's a game that you can make a better case for that it's the best game ever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it might not be my all-time
I personally
favorite.
quite do know what you mean.
But just like in objective, like,
right.
There's a buddy of mine who is on another podcast, the Gamerdelphia podcast, and he doesn't like Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that is the most garbage take I've. That's like. It's like being like, like, I feel like water's kind of overrated. It's like, shut up. What are you talking about, Breath of the Wild?
Does he like other Zelda games?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's several camps of people that don't like Breath of the Wild. The main one is people who love Zelda and don't like the ways in which Breath of the Wild changed it.
Yeah, no, I get it. They're just wrong.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, yeah, like, no, you changed it. It's like, right, yeah, and it's better now.
Yeah. I talked to a friend of mine that from high school that I hadn't talked to in forever, and I was like, oh, you're into gaming? I didn't know. And he's like, yeah, man. And he mentioned something about Breath of the Wild and how it's my favorite game. And he was like, man, I tried and I just couldn't. And then we like talked about it for a bit, and then pretty much I convinced him he was like, yeah, I didn't like some of those things, but those things aren't bad. I just was mad that they were different. Okay, I guess it is a great game. And I was like,
yeah,
solid.
I feel like that is like one of my biggest frustrations with like the way that people express their opinions about art, where it's like, right. I don't like it, so it's bad. Mm-hmm. And that's like, they're not the same thing. Like something cannot be like when people are like, oh, like I don't like Animal Crossing because it's not a real game and it's bad. It's like, no, you just don't like it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, I don't like Call of Duty, but I don't think it's a bad game. It's just not for me. You know, like, that's okay. You know, like,
I think for me, a measure of whether something's good or bad has a lot more to do with whether it's disingenuous or not than some things, especially when thinking about like music or something like that. Like I don't know, like pop country or whatever. Like I worked in the pop country industry for 2.5 years, and I just, not about it, because it's like, it's all very like cardboard cutout kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. And like, especially having like, I've written many a song and I actually, I forgot about this. Okay. So this is very tangenty. My wife and I are adopting. We're trying to do a bunch of fundraising stuff because adopting is super, super expensive. But one of those things is I'm putting out a bunch of music that I'm like, I did, but I never put out. Some of that is a very brief period of time that I was like, maybe I'll just try writing country stuff. Not because I like country at all, but just because like it's a career. I'm in Nashville. Why not?
We make some money.
I've got some of those songs that I have yet to put out, but I'm planning to at some point soon. And it is a riot and a half. That's all I'll say.
So exciting.
But all that to say, yeah, I don't know, whatever. The
Just
main point, things are good.
Has nothing to do with anything, but we got on country music. I'm going to say this. If you are like, I don't like country music because like you've only heard bad pop country, go listen to some good down home country music or some like bluegrass. Like go listen to the Avett Brothers.
Oh my goodness.
Like that's a good country band. And like see where you're at then. Right? Like go listen to like Emotionalism by the Avett Brothers and like tell me that that's not like good, that it's not soulful, right? Even if it's not for you, like.
And this isn't even country, but we're talking about bluegrass. Punch Brothers, Nickel Creek, and Chris Thile. Anything, if I can't not mention those while we're talking about that. So those are Punch Brothers is probably one of my favorite bands of all time, I would imagine.
I just feel like everyone's life would be better if we were like more open to like giving stuff a shot instead of just being like, I don't like this. You know, it's like there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I'm learning that recently, especially I've realized that there's some biases that I just have with certain things, like especially music. So Rob of Rule It to Review, I don't know if you know his channel, but he also, like, we have a lot of musical overlap in the metal kind of sphere, but anytime he talks about it, I think he just turned 40, so he's a little bit older than us, and he talks about his favorite bands and like some of them Periphery or whatever, which by the way, every time I see the singer of Periphery, I'm sure you've gotten this before, but you remind me so much of really? Okay.
I'm looking this up right now.
Yeah, I mean, he also like dyes his hair different things. So like different pictures, you may or may not look more or less like him. But something about his vibe and your vibe just resonate on the same wavelength.
What's the guy's name?
I don't remember his name. Periphery singer.
Is it to do with the nose ring?
Yeah, I think so.
I could kind of see that. They have similar beards.
Spencer Sotelo. Yeah. Yeah, that's him. And just in general, his vibe, like if you watch a music video of theirs or something, like I don't know, something about it. In any case, but we listen to the same kind of stuff. Talking about the context was biases and all that. Rob's favorite band is Metallica, and I have never been able to get into Metallica. And I realized it's purely because there were some kids in my high school that listened to Metallica, Iron Maiden, and like the classic metal stuff. Yeah. And they were super like down on newer metal that I was listening to at the time, The Devil Wears Prada, Under Oath, whatever. And also just they were jerks in general. So I just associate those bands with those kind of people, you know? And so I reached out to Rob last week and I was like, okay, I need to just find out, you know, like, so where do I start? So all that to say, I'm not in love with Metallica or anything, but I've started to try to get over biases because I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's just like a matter of like, I think recognizing that you have biases and like actively just trying to like open yourself up to the idea of, because there's so many things I remember being like a snotty teenager who was into punk rock and being like, I don't like rap and I don't like country. And then I listened to some and then was like, oh, it's actually pretty good. You know,
there's some bad rap and there's some bad country, but that doesn't encapsulate the whole.
There's also plenty of bad punk, which I was, you know, liked
absolutely,
a lot of. So like, you know, it's like every genre has good.
And I mean, ska is just bad in general. So,
whoa, Parker, come on, man, you can't just take a shot across the bow like that. That's not right.
I'm just kidding. Obviously, that was purely empty when
you brought up Under Oath.
We're still on the first Q&A question. All right, moving on. I think we made some very good points. We've all learned some things. Let's keep going. Seven asks, salty or sweet licorice?
I've never had salty licorice, and I have no idea what that's about.
It's super popular in any Dutch origin countries. So like the Netherlands, obviously. Bianca is from South Africa, so that's like there's a lot of Dutch people there. My mom grew up in Australia. There's a lot of Dutch people for some reason in Australia. So my mom loves salty licorice. Disgusting. I know my mom loves it. I love my mom. So obviously wonderful people can love salty licorice. I am not one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go sweet by default, I guess, but
I'm going to go neither because I don't, especially because it always tricks you out where it's like, oh, this is going to be grape. And then it's licorice. If you buy like, I don't know, jelly beans or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I like licorice in moderation. Like every time I there's this like bougie kind of like bagged licorice that they have at Wawa sometimes that like I like, but I always get it and I have like a few pieces and I'm like, that's really good. And then eventually I'm like, I don't want it anymore. It's too much. Yeah. I always regret getting a bag of it. I'm like, this is way too much.
Yep. I assume Bianca salty. I'm guessing for you. Let me know. I'd be curious to know at this point. Questions from Twitter. First up from AJ, whoever that is, who said, everybody's asking about the Switch Pro, but I want to know the real juicy deets. What features will the inevitable Switch Con have, and how much will Nintendo pay consumers to use it?
I'm going to say that the Switch Con is native 540 resolution. It's going to be Joy-Con drift is one of the like top features that it's like instead of HD rumble,
every button drifts.
Have Joy-Con drift.
All the buttons drift. So like you could be hitting A and it's like B, I guess. Just, why not?
It's like Tokyo Drift, the Fast and Furious movie, but it's like, it's that kind of vibe.
Exactly.
And how much will they pay consumers to use it? I think it'll only be for Nintendo influencers who make YouTube videos once a week and then don't show up for their own podcast. I think that's going to be the thing.
Perfect. Then that's the truth. Now you all know. Falcon asks, I wonder which is most likely to be announced. Super Mario Galaxy 3, Odyssey 2, Sunshine 2, Mario Teaches Typing 2. I mean, I think we're all
typing.
Mario Teaches Typing. Yeah, exactly. Everybody, really needs to know how to actually, I think instead of teaching typing, they're going to go Mario Teaches Cursive, really, get the up-and-comers these days. I'll make sure that everybody knows.
For something really relevant, like
exactly. Max Wright, who we happen to be somewhat familiar with.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. Max Wright asked, with the sad exit of our friend DJ from the Loot Pots team, RIP, who is now your favorite member? Side note, I didn't know DJ had left, and I was like, hey, DJ, we haven't gotten you on the podcast before. You want to join this Friday? And he was like, I can't, but also I'm not doing Loot Pots anymore. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. It is a real shame. Thankfully not for any, it's no bad blood or anything like that. We love DJ. He's a great guy. He just needed to step away from the content life a little bit, as anyone who makes content can understand. So, rest in peace. We miss you, DJ.
So who is now your favorite Loot Pots member?
I mean, it's Steve, obviously, right? I mean, he's like my co-host, like that's my ride or die right there, man. You know how many episodes of After Dark we've done, like, I mean,
I do.
Yeah.
It's like pitch black at this point.
Yeah. Right. We're sitting in the dark together, man. Steve's my boy.
And then question 2, who's your favorite large bearded UK member of the team? Preferably one who works for a gambling affiliate and wears lots of trainers. Think carefully.
Chloe.
Yeah, definitely Chloe.
Of course, it's Max. I love you, Max.
We do love Max.
The thing is now, I guess the fact that DJ is not around leaves an opening on the show for someone, maybe some guy who wears trainers and like talks about Metroid a lot. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who comes along.
Scootish asks, do you think the new Xbox and PS5 will be readily available to those that want it, or do you think because of the pandemic only a lucky few will be able to get one and it'll be months before more are produced?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be the latter.
100%. I think the latter. Yeah. Kind of sucks. But I definitely, I feel like that's the case.
Did you see that thing where Sony put up the thing where you can sign up to have an opportunity
pre-order
to buy
pre-order?
Yeah, so I did that. So I don't feel like my chances are that great, but we'll see how that works out. I'm going to see if I can like email them and be like, I'm an influencer. Don't look at my channel. It's not about Nintendo. PlayStation. Xbox might have an easier time. I don't know why I feel that way, but they haven't talked about it as much. Where like originally the PlayStation 5 was only going to have like 5 million, and then they increased the number because there was a lot of interest. But I think you're probably looking at it in the neighborhood of like between, I don't know, 7 and 10. Like I can't imagine it's any more than that. That's not that many. So I think it's going to be tough.
Yep, I agree. And I'm not trying to be out here buying either one, so I'll be on easy street, to be honest. But
I'm trying to get both of them. I'm crazy.
At least on the plus side, I'm not stealing them from any of y'all who are trying to get it. So
it's true.
You're welcome.
You can help me get
you a service. Actually, that's true. I could try.
Keep your peepers open.
Yeah. Aaron Fields, this was a great question. Heard this in another video once. Would you rather dress like Tingle for 1 week or have Navi constantly in your ear for 1 month?
This is so easy. I would dress like Tingle for a week because A, it's quarantine. Who am I? I'm not going anywhere. But worst case scenario, I got to go to the grocery store or something, dress up as Tingle. Not that bad. And on all the podcasts I do in a week, it's a bit, right? Like it's like, oh, Pete showed up dressed like Tingle. That's funny. Yep. Then it's over. I'm done. Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I feel like based on that logic, I'd say Tingle. I was going to say Navi just for the laughs because, like, yeah. I always think Navi's just super annoying, but just a funny, bit or whatever as well. But this reminded me of a similar would you rather that a friend of mine asked a long time ago. He asked, would you rather be a toilet for a week or a dog for a year? I answered a dog for a year. And he was like, no, a toilet for a week. You're not like it's not like the toilet is your mouth or anything like that, blah, 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 blah. And like went on why toilet for a week is better. Cause like, it's just a week. People will be like, where'd he go? And then it's like, oh, he's back. It's been a week. But a dog for a year. Yeah, it's cool and all, but it's a year. And I was like, dog for a year. And like, even if I understood some of his points, I was like, dog for a year.
Dog for a year. You kidding me? Because what you're saying is like, yeah, like don't get me wrong. My life will be wholly disrupted. Yeah. But like, I don't know. Like I don't have to go to work for a year. That's pretty chill.
And then, I mean, he was also like, you can't tell anybody that it happened. Like you can't really communicate it, blah, blah, blah. And like saying all this stuff. And I was like, yeah. Dog for a year. So we argued about it over a period of several weeks where we were living near each other and stuff. And then I get a text message at one point randomly in the future. And he says, hey, Parker, how's it going? I'm like, I'm doing all right. He was like, did you have a good year? And I was like, yeah. He's like, because you've been a dog for a year. And like, ironically, that was the year in which I had met my wife. That was the year in which like all these things. And I'm like, point proven, but dog for a year. Sorry about it.
Could have really messed up your flow.
It really could have, but it was fun. So there's that story. Lou Fantini, who I believe is one of yours.
Yeah, this is my the bass player in my band, Long Frank.
Hey, nice. Asked which Animal Crossing villager would be the worst roommate.
I thought this was a great question.
Navi. Tingle. Got it.
For me, one. It's got to be Cherie. She was the villager who I famously have been trying to get rid of for the entirety of my playing New Horizons. Like she was like the third or fourth villager who showed up when like they just sell the plot and you don't get to like, I didn't know. And then I was like, I don't like her. And I didn't like her. I forget the first game I experienced her in, but Pocket Camp was where I really was like, I hate her.
Yeah.
So no thanks.
I don't know. I don't know many villagers past the ones that I have. So my experience, probably Muffy, I guess.
Okay.
But solid. There it is. Next question. This is from Chad Dominique, who asked, this is an interesting one. Worst case scenario, Nintendo announces / releases nothing else notable this year and continues their quiet streak with a sprinkling of small indie showcases. What speculative trajectory does that set them on for the next year? We kind of talked about this earlier, but in a more kind of pointed, question. I think so. Here's my thoughts. Is I think it all depends on how they start off 2021 at that point, because like it kind of feels like, okay, well, if stuff kind of sucks for the rest of the year, on a Nintendo front, like that's fine. But if then the next year starts out all right, then it'll feel like, okay, it was, worth it to now have like awesome stuff coming along. If we get into next year and it feels like more of the same, then I feel like that's the point where you could start seeing more people like selling their Switches off or whatever, because they're just disenfranchised. And to be perfectly honest, like, I think if then, like, so say January comes around and, this question mark number of people sold their Switch because they were like, nothing's coming out for me anymore. The Switch just isn't my bag, whatever, I'm done. If then Nintendo was like, here's all this stuff we have coming back out, I think a number of those people would get a Switch again and be like, I'm hopping back on board. But I think also a chunk of those people would be like, whatever, sorry, I'm done. Like, kind of like me with Animal Crossing updates, like they would have to do really, really substantial updates for me to bother coming back. At this point, I'm like, I'm happy, I'm done. And I was, we had a ride, it's done. So that's kind of how I feel all that goes. So, for the core gamers, but yes.
Yeah, so for me, I think that this year being quiet, if it is indeed quiet for the reasons that we talked about, right? Like if Nintendo is sitting on software, or if they have a bunch of software that was supposed to come out that has been pushed back in a window of 6 to 12 months, I think 2021 could arguably be the strongest year that Switch has had since 2017.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I don't think that 2018 or 2019 or even 2020 have been bad years for the Switch, but I think it's hard to argue that 2017 wasn't the best, considering that we got Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, along with a bunch of other really good games. So with that in mind, a lot of the big Nintendo games that came out then could be due for a sequel. Like, we know Breath of the Wild 2 is in development. I am confident it's coming out next year. That is already a thing where if that game hits and it's as good as the first one, that makes 2020. They don't need to put out another game, and people will complain if they don't put out another game, but they won't need to put out another game if that game is that good. Add to the idea that, like, there's supposed to be this Mario collection that may or may not be pushed to next year. There's the possibility of an Odyssey 2. There's the possibility of, like the next game from the ARMS team. Like there's a lot of kind of bullets that have been fired that could be back in the chamber now, right? Like, we could get the announcement of a follow-up to Three Houses, not like a Three Houses 2, but the next Fire Emblem. Like, those are all things that are reasonably, not necessarily all guaranteed to happen next year, but things that could happen alongside announcements. And that paints a better picture for where we're going moving forward. Like, the DLC for Pokemon's coming out this year. The announcement of a new Pokemon game is probably imminent. Like, we're gearing up for a lot of stuff again, I think.
Right. And so, I think especially if stuff is pushed out of 2020, and it could mean that also then stuff that's in 2021 gets pushed alongside it. But theoretically, if it's not, then that just means that, like, what didn't come out this year will just strengthen an already strong year, probably. So,
when you think about how many Nintendo franchises that, like, had smaller releases, that, like, Kirby had a game like 3 years ago, could be a new Kirby game around the corner. Yoshi, like, there's a lot of stuff that could still be in the pipe. So I'm pretty confident 2021 is going to be a good year.
Yep. So next question comes from Marco. Says, I've been wondering what the advent of quantum computing might mean for computing power and how it might affect the gaming industry in the future. Likely a problem for like the 2030s, but will things run smoother? Will be more graphically powerful? Or might this not spill into the commercial at all? Alternatively, will Super Mario Sunshine come out for the Switch?
So this is another one of my boys. This is one of my co-hosts from the Comics Pals. If you're a comic reader, check us out every Monday on your podcast platforms, the Comics Pals. Thanks for writing in, Marco. So I think, like he said, this is like such a far-flung thing, but I think the thing that I'm most interested in is the stuff that I think we're just starting to see the surface scratched of now, where it's less to me about like how much more realistic games can look. Like, that's going to keep happening. Graphics will continue to get better. But, like, I think we're hitting a plateau of how much that matters. Whereas I think the thing that you're seeing this generation that's going to be really interesting is how the amount of computing power allows you to make worlds that are more detailed and more developed and more lived in, and that feel like alive, you know? Yeah. And I think about like how amazing it was to play like Skyrim for the first time, where you're like, oh, like events happen organically in the world. And like, if I die and reload a save, like the same stuff won't happen walking down the road the same time. And like, those were things that were like really, really novel in 2011 when that came out.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you kind of take them for granted, but
yeah.
I think
I definitely do. Cause I played Skyrim for the first time in 2017 and none of that stuff stood out to me at all.
Right, yeah, because so it's like, oh, so many
funny.
games learn that now. You know, like Breath of the Wild does that really well. And that is the thing I think that makes open world games like the difference between them being like, I don't mean this as like a dig, because there are a lot of games I like this, but like the kind of like Far Cry or like Ghost of Tsushima was like this, where it's an open world game and there's a lot to do and like you can get lost in the world and it feels authentic, but it's very much like check a box. Go do this thing. It's not about like water cooler moments. And that's what like Breath of the Wild's all about, where it's like, oh, I stumbled across this thing that didn't necessarily need to be there. And like a bunch of my friends never saw. And like, those are the kinds of moments that I think like make a game feel like it's worth exploring. And that's the stuff that this kind of technology is really going to impact the most, is like, we can have 100 NPCs on a screen at the same time, and they all have different animations and they all have different paths, and like, you know, or you can have a game where there are splintering options, and like something like, you know, Detroit this generation, where it's like, where, you know, video games last gen, maybe you had 3 options. This one gave you like 10, right? Imagine when it's like 50, you know, and those minute decisions that you make moment to moment can really matter. And like what it looks like Cyberpunk's going to be doing, right? Like, that's what I think is most interesting about the future of what tech means for games.
Yeah. I think on a technological standpoint too, you know, like as far as whether things will spill into commercial or not, I think video games are always going to be at like the lowest or the medium common denominator as far as power goes, where like there's always going to be stuff that's more powerful than the, you know, mainline video game consoles. But I think they will try to keep up as much as they possibly can up to a point where, like you said, it kind of plateaus out. So the thing that's going to be interesting too is like, at this point, there's enough power to make a video game character look almost exactly, you know, identical, like almost like a real person or whatever. But the tricky thing is more in how we consistently capture and recreate that, not just like, can the graphics do it? Like looking at a game like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order or whatever, like the people in that game look great. You know, like
the
obviously,
hair.
Yeah, like some more graphics power could make them go from like Uncanny Valley to just flawless, you know, probably. But at the same time, that game is like mocapping every single thing or whatever. Whereas then there's other games that are also going to be PS5. Like we saw some, I think in the Xbox, I don't know. We saw some that are next gen technically games that still are not doing any of that stuff and therefore look kind of bad still, because it's like, we're not good at just making faces look like faces. We're good at capturing faces and making them look like themselves.
And animating them, yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing. I think, you know, like as we progress, those are going to be the things that affect the like real graphical fidelity things. But then on the, ideally it'll be more gameplay based, like you said, where the more memory there is, the more any of that kind of stuff, the more you can do fun things.
Well, and on the commercial note, just one last note on this one. I think you only need to look at VR to see how games often drive technology. I think a lot of the kind of technology that you're talking about will be applied in games first, because that's often the case.
I mean, like Unreal Engine, that whole interesting thing where like they use that to make, I mean, like The Mandalorian, and that's like the most common example, but like news things and like all sorts of,
or like the military uses stuff like to make like, you know, there's a lot of examples of video games driving technology. Period.
So, but the more important question though is alternatively, will Super Mario Sunshine come out for the Switch? Yeah,
yes.
100%.
I think it will.
Yeah, I think I mean, again, it'll be part of that 3D collection thing, it sounds like, but it seems like it's gonna happen. So there's that. So. And then the last batch of questions, which is here we go from Discord. Let's go. Falcon asks this one question that's a little bit long, but it's actually just one question. Since we're almost out of relevant Wii U game support to Switch, what Wii/GameCube games, assuming Nintendo doesn't make GameCube and Wii games available on NSO or some other service, would you like to see make the jump? Side note, I have a video planned for at some point of pretty much this exact thing.
Nice.
So, yeah, I don't
Spoilers.
But Falcon says, personally, I'd like F-Zero GX as a port or remaster with some deluxe features. I could go on all day about what that means. Mario Kart Double Dash was a great game and a unique experience. The LAN play could be upgraded to a fully online experience. Having the 1,000-year door would likely pacify the diehard Paper Mario fans. Wario Land Shake It was a great game. The hand-drawn visuals, that soundtrack, the overall experience was great. Definitely needs new life in Switch. So here's the thing. This is spoiler-ish for whenever I make this video, but the fact that the Wii U well is drying up, like you said. I think like Xenoblade Chronicles, which I don't know for sure if that fits into what I'm about to say. Xenoblade Chronicles, definitely Skyward Sword, assuming it happens, which it seems like it's going to, are the beginning of Wii games getting ported because there's no way to port them easily. Well, Skyward Sword can't just be ported. You have to do a remaster because of the controls and stuff. And there's a number of Wii games that I think they would like to live on in the future, but whereas they can just eventually put GameCube games on modern hardware without having to think too hard about the controls or anything like that, they won't be able to do that with Wii games. So I think that's the way they
technically because of you could use Joy-Cons for a lot of that functionality, but it would have to be adjusted.
Yeah. And even if, maybe the next Switch doesn't have Joy-Cons in the same way or something. So I'm wondering if that's something where they use this opportunity to cement, this is the forever version of this game, of Skyward Sword, of Wario Land Shake It, kind of, it's like waggle controls, but and Mario Galaxy, and all that kind of stuff. So, kind of just go ahead and bite the bullet, make the transitions, and go from there. But otherwise, I think GameCube eventually will be part of Nintendo Switch Online, but it's so far down the road. And I think they'll port a bunch of the games anyway as remasters in addition to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we'll get GameCube on NSO. I would like to see it, but I wouldn't
I don't know that it would be till the next system to be
first.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's a while away.
If it exists.
Right.
In terms of what games I'd like to see, Custom Robo is a GameCube game that I love that is super rare and hard to come by, and it's
called Chibi Robo, but go on. I'm just kidding.
And I had another one in mind that was a Wii game. Oh, you know what? I would love to see the Pikmin 1 and 2 collection.
That's what I was about to say.
That'd be great.
Look at that. Yeah, I think Pikmin 1 and 2 would be great. Super Mario Sunshine sounds like, it'll be coming anyway.
Galaxy as well.
Yep. Galaxy. Double Dash, obviously, like you said. But then otherwise...
Give me a port of the original Animal Crossing.
Yeah, and original Luigi's Mansion stuff. I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of games on there that could just come over.
The reality is I want all of the Nintendo published games available.
Exactly.
That's it. Yep. Just give me all of them.
It's going to be so much harder for Nintendo than it is for Xbox, for example, because it's, because of this, I don't know. It's just an interesting
thing. Because Nintendo doesn't want you to have the games. That's why. Why is it Earthbound on the Switch? Don't lie to me, Nintendo. It's on the Super Nintendo Classic. I got it. I paid for it. Give me it.
Exactly. Pat Green, Poopsmith asks, since there's a reduction in Will Wolf in the world, when can he come on the fanatixfour podcast? And I guess what would he even talk about? So this is on the Wolf Den. Will, Bob's brother, is stopping making videos because he was the one that did comic book videos and stuff like that. But he's not going to be doing it any longer. So, which is sad. And I need to I need to message him or whatever. But yeah. Honestly, I'd still very much like him to come on the podcast, even if he's not doing Wolf Den stuff. So there you go.
He did just walk away from making content, so I maybe give him some time.
Unacceptable. Never. Cowboy asks, what is the number one thing each of you would like to see added or upgraded in in the new Switch family model that's being rumored, assuming it's still in this generation of Switch and not a next-gen Switch. Also, Parker, have you been cast as the new voice actor for Kermit?
Do you have a good Kermit?
So it all started when I think it was Ella, but Max mentioned it to me, but Ella was Max listened to a video of mine and she was like, is that Kermit? And then they laughed about it and he told me that. And since then, I've had several comments that are something to the effect of like, kind of sound like Kermit. So at the beginning of this week's video, the first sentence or two was in a Kermit voice on purpose.
That's
and
hilarious.
I called out and I was like, okay, since everybody's, mentioning this, then here you go. There it is for fun.
I love it.
Yeah. But the funny thing is I noticed, and it's only when I record, I feel like for the videos, because the way that I talk is just like more, I don't know. It's just, I end up just talking different, but there were times after I stopped doing the impression that I felt like I sounded more like Kermit in my regular
and now
talking.
it's like in your head.
I was like, oh my goodness, this is the worst. So yeah, there's that. But the real question there was, what's the number one thing you'd each like to see added or upgraded in the new Switch family model that's being rumored?
1080p handheld, baby. That's it for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think to accommodate that, they need to give it the more power, because I would just say a little bit more juice.
Yeah.
But
A little more under the hood.
The two kind of, go together so that,
I feel like we cheat. We both, that's it. Both of them.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I'd say that, to be perfectly honest, that's like the main thing. There's a lot of other nice quality of life features, but that's the thing that I most want. Mm-hmm. Joker asks, when do you think the PS5 and Series X will come out and how much will each one cost?
I think they will both come out in November. There's currently a rumor that PS5 is coming out in the middle of November and that the Xbox will be out about 2 weeks beforehand. I'm willing to take that to the bank. That makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily which one will come first, but I think November in that window, that's generally when consoles come out. Yep. That's when the last batch did. So it makes sense. How much will they cost? I have gone back and forth on this a lot. Mm-hmm. I think that the PlayStation 5 is I think they're both going to want to hit $500.
Yeah.
I don't know that they both will, because I think it would make sense for the Series X to cost maybe closer to $6. Mm-hmm. But I could also see Microsoft being willing to take it on the chin to be competitive. So I think between $500 and $600 is where I don't think they'll be more than $6. I don't think they'll be less than $5.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, and the interesting part will also be the Series S stuff, if that happens. And I'd guess that that's $300 and all digital would be.
And then also is the discless, how much cheaper is the discless PS5? Because you got to imagine that'll be at least $50 to $100.
I feel like only $50 cheaper to be like, I don't know that it can cost.
Disc drives are expensive.
Really? Like $100 expensive?
It could be.
Wow. I didn't know. Well, so that's what I was going to wonder too, is like, because I kind of like, I was looking at getting an Xbox One X, partly because we don't have a Blu-ray player in our house. We just have really old DVD players that are like the $20 ones anyway. And it would just be nice to have something to play like Game Pass and stuff on. But I'm not going to get a Series X, and the One X's are pretty much out of stock these days. So if a One S came out and you could get a peripheral Blu-ray player or whatever, then that'd be cool. But at that point, it sounds like it would be at least $50 for just the disc reader anyway. So I don't know, probably not worth it. We'll see. But yeah, I'd imagine about the same. Like I really think $500, only because of the marketing reasons of it, not because of the manufacturing costs and all that. Like, I don't know how much it's going to cost to make. Maybe they can't afford to go that low, but I think for sales reasons, they need to, if they possibly can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you have to think the nice thing about the digital stuff too is they get a better cut on software, so they can also afford to sell it at a better loss because they make their money back quicker.
That's very true. Yep. Next questions. A bunch from Grimhane. First question, how has Pete enjoyed his first ever time on the podcast?
Oh, it's been great. I hope you'll have me back again soon.
Yeah, it's been great. He hopes that we'll have him back again soon. Then he goes on to ask, when will the PS5 Pro and Xbox Series X to the power of X launch? to the precise year, month, day, and hour.
Okay. I'm gonna. Okay, wait. I gotta see what day of the week these dates are before I say anything.
I'm gonna say 2024, October 17th, 9:13 a.m. I don't know what day of the week October 17th is, but 17th, 2024.
I'm gonna say Xbox comes out. I'm not getting into the hour or whatever because
it's 9:13 a.m. It's okay. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. So the 6th, November 6th for the Xbox, okay. November 13th for the PS5.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
Oh wait, are you talking about the standard PS5 and Xbox Series X? Because he was asking about the PS5 Pro and the Xbox Series.
Oh my God, he said the X.
So
okay.
I mean, I'm just kidding. It does
those same dates, but
yeah, years later. Perfect. That's the one. We got it. How many Twinkies are too many? If Pete doesn't know what a Twinkie is, here's a handy link for him. Who doesn't know what a Twinkie is?
If I don't know what a Twinkie is, I'm an American. I know what a Twinkie is.
How many? One Twinkies is too many Twinkies.
How many come in a package too, right?
2, I think. Yeah.
That's probably enough.
Yeah. Reasonably. I did in like middle school, I really liked the, what is it, like raspberry and coconut or whatever, which is a weird combination.
Oh, snowballs?
I think so. They were the shape of Twinkies, which I don't know if that's the normal way that they are, but
maybe that's something else.
I want to say it was snowballs, but I think maybe there were like Twinkie shaped snowballs or something. I really liked those in middle school, but
I like the
a long time.
You know, they have the Hostess cupcakes. They have the orange ones though instead of the chocolate ones.
Oh, interesting.
Very good. Very.
Is
good.
it like orange chocolate flavored or just like orange flavored?
An orange cake, orange icing, and then the same white cream.
Okay, interesting.
It's good.
Is Brooklyn Nine-Nine a good show? Okay, he says if Pete hasn't seen it, he has homework before. He can be invited to appear on the podcast for the first time. If Parker hasn't seen it, judging shall happen. Obvious, you know us. I'm sure we've talked about Brooklyn Nine-Nine on here before.
I think the actual first time I came on the show, we talked about Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm a big fan of sitcoms in general, but specifically the Michael Schur, like all those.
I'm rewatching The Office right now, by the way, and season 1 is so painful, but it's great.
Yeah, Parks and Rec is the best one of any of them now. So that's my hot take.
I don't know. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I don't know that I would state it super fervently either.
I just did spicy hot takes.
Ooh, look at that, spicy. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is great. Yeah,
great show.
I'm curious how they're gonna do because they canned a whole like half a season.
I think it was like 4 episodes they had totally written that they scrapped. Yeah.
So like, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah. I'm really glad that they're doing that though because it's making me believe that maybe I'll still be able to enjoy it.
Yes, exactly. Even just that. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, put a real damper on my enjoyment of that show. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that it's not good. It's just, it's tough.
Context. Yep. If my washer takes 1 hour and my dryer takes 45 minutes and I have 4 loads of laundry to do it at what time do I need to start doing laundry to be done by exactly 3 p.m.? Don't do it at all.
I don't care.
You're good.
Good luck. Next question.
Why do hot dogs and hot dog buns come in different quantities?
Because capitalism is out to get you, brother. That's why.
Very true. But do they? I feel like it's 8 and 8. Is it not? I gotta tell you, I don't know. Maybe it's 10 and 8. I think it could be 10 and 8. 10 hot dogs, 8 buns, and 100%. That's capitalism. There's so many things the grocery stores do. Food Theory. Go check out Food Theory's channel.
It's brand new, right?
It is brand new.
I didn't know that was a thing until yesterday.
It's the same game theory, film theory guys and stuff. Dan, who comes on here every once in a while, is their senior editor. So we stand Dan.
We stand Dan.
But yeah,
maybe you use the extra hot dogs to put in your macaroni and cheese, which is gross, but people do it.
Interesting. Yep.
Maybe.
I can see it. What is the average airspeed velocity of a laden swallow? African or European? You tell me.
What is your
That's
quest?
all. Yellow. Is this AJ's departure from the podcast? Are he and Will teaming up to bring us the first and only Static Shock game YouTube channel?
Yeah, unfortunately, we waited until the end of the episode. I am AJ's replacement. Welcome to the New World Order.
You're AJ. I mean,
I'm AJ
like,
now.
Fully changed name, everything.
Yeah. I'm really good at Smash. Come fight me.
So good. Duncan asks, why is the pumpkin spice latte the greatest innovation known to man? And why does liking them make me a basic white chick? And Cowboys.
Because people will not let people enjoy things. And just like we said earlier, look, just check your bias at the door. And if you can't do that, just shut up. Okay? There's nothing wrong with people liking pumpkin spice. Just drink your latte. Okay?
I'm pumpkin spice.
You like
whatever?
It?
No, I just am. I like in the Spice Girls. They've got baby spice.
Oh, you're pumpkin.
Cinnamon spice. Is there cinnamon spice? Scary spice.
No, there's not. I think it's
baby, scary, sporty,
posh, and
ginger. It's close to cinnamon.
Pretty close.
I'm pumpkin spice. And Cowboy,
spice is good.
Why does Duncan participate in such barbaric practices? And then I think he had something of murdering pumpkins.
Look, I'm just saying, I don't drink coffee, so like pumpkin spice latte is not for me. But if you can look me in the face and tell me that you don't enjoy a nice pumpkin spice donut, cookie, a nice pumpkin pie, something wrong with you. You're the problem, okay?
There it is.
That's my hot take.
And that is about it for the episode. We are done talking forever. AJ is now here. This is the new AJ. What a wonderful time. Hey, everybody have a good old time. We'll see you around sometime soon. Bye.